Hey guys, Tom LoBianco here, editor, co-founder of 24/7 News, coming to you live from the suburban Baltimore area. I've got today Isaac Arnsdorf, one of three power authors of the book 2024, along with Josh Dawsey and Tyler Pager. Isaac, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
I'm still producing this, as you can see, and we do not have Virginia fundraising numbers. So let me take that banner off the screen. Where are those Virginia fundraising numbers? We're going to be revisiting 2024, which feels like a million years ago. So thanks for being here, man. I want to start with the Democratic quote unquote autopsy, because, it was a decade ago the Republicans did an autopsy, which I would argue is probably a more thorough, if not exactly accurate, autopsy in terms of what would work for them.
Mm-hmm.
What's your sense of, like, have Democrats writ large learned anything from this? I mean, is there a course correction, a needed course correction that's happening?
I mean, look, the purpose of the autopsy is different from the purpose of the book. I mean, obviously, with our book, we're wrestling a lot with Biden and Harris and their mistakes and their baggage, as candidates and as campaigns. But for the purpose of a party autopsy, I actually don't think it's crazy to put that aside and look more toward the fundamentals. Like, what is our path as a party? What is our constituency? What is our coalition? What is our message? Why have we been losing? And, those are questions that are bigger than Biden or Harris, as much as, obviously in the book we dive into, and you can pinpoint individual fateful decisions. But there's definitely something bigger going on with the Democrats now. And so I don't think it's crazy for the autopsy to dive into that.
Actually, I was reading, you had a very great piece on the 1-year anniversary of the assassination attempt in Butler. I enjoyed reading it in part because you knit in the religion and the religious fervor behind Trump after this happened. And it had me thinking about, and you guys report about this in 2024, what are seminal moments because I felt like there were so many times where we would, we're in the weeds, we're covering one of the debates, and it's like, oh my God, this is a moment. But then you look back on it. Are there things like the assassination attempt where it's like you look back on it and you're like, oh, wow, that was incredibly important, versus when you're in the moment, when you're in the midst of it and you're like, I'm still trying to decide?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of things that we threw out along the way. Like, I don't know, one I'm thinking of is, do you remember it was in late 2023 and both the UAW was on strike, and both Biden and Trump went to Michigan, like on the same day or within a day of each other, right? Like, when that happened, it seemed like a big deal. It sort of felt like the unofficial kickoff of the general. And look, had the strike gone on longer, had the impacts been felt more deeply throughout the economy, that could have been something that mattered, had more reaching impacts. But the way things played out, it's not in the book at all. And the assassination attempt, I think, was obviously a big deal at the time, right? I mean, there was no way that wasn't going to be important, but I think the nature of the importance wasn't immediately clear. And with time, I think the meaning has been just what you said. The way that, so two things. So for the people who are already committed to Trump, it created a sense that there was something more than human history happening here. It gave a supernatural feeling to the meaning of that campaign and the meaning of Trump as a super historical figure. And then I think there are also a lot of voters who weren't already deeply in the Trump camp who looked at this and were like, it made them see Trump in a different way. I mean, Trump has a reputation for being, I want to say this carefully, like for not being the bravest person when it came to his own skin. And obviously, you don't know how someone is going to perform in a scenario like that until it happens. And I think he surprised a lot of people with that. And people saw it as like, that's it. What else is it going to be? And the most important person like that was Elon Musk, right? Who you remember,
right?
before he hated Trump, before he loved Trump, was like a reluctant Trump backer. And we cover this in the book, how, he, at the beginning of the campaign, he agreed with Trump on immigration, but he didn't trust Trump at all. He wouldn't give any money to Trump. And he was encouraging other donors to create their own vehicle because they thought that Trump would spend all the money on legal fees. And it wasn't until Butler that he full throatedly endorsed Trump and became his biggest donor.
Well, to be honest, that's a pretty fair assessment from earlier in 2024. Coming out of 2023, he was, he absolutely was spending it. I've forgotten about that. I mean, my God, so much. I read that you guys did more than 350 interviews for this.
We really wanted this to be the definitive story. So we cover the whole campaign from when the candidates decided to run, which, we should mention something interesting is, like, it wasn't inevitable for either Biden or Trump that they were going to run or that they were going to be the nominees. You can pinpoint individual decisions that led to that. And then carry it through all the way to the end. We didn't know that there was going to end up being 3 campaigns when we started. But then the other thing we did, we thought it was important to really get everyone's side and test them against each other to come to the best obtainable version of the truth that we could, and then exhaustively fact check it. So we had an independent fact checker, and we also went over everything with all the sources and gave everyone the opportunity to comment on anything that was written about them.
Nice. And for folks listening, if you're watching us on Substack, make sure to hit that heart button. That helps with the algo on Substack. If you're catching us on YouTube, I don't know what the heart button is on there, but whatever it is, please hit it. I'm at a hospital, so I can't. I don't have multiple screens open right now. Normally, I would. My guest today is Isaac Arnsdorf. He co-authored a 2024 just incredible account of it. I used to write this last year. I feel like the word I wrote the most was historic. It really was historic.
Yeah.
And just seeing the all of it. If you haven't already, please go pick up a copy. And Isaac, are you on Substack? Are you on or do they let you do that at the post?
I haven't yet. No, maybe I should set one up.
Oh, or at least a dump. Park your name.
Yeah.
All right, so you don't have to get real Isaac Arnsdorf, on Substack.
Good idea.
I just was astounded going back over everything, how much happened. And I mean, you have this anecdote about Laura Loomer, and also too how much Trump world changed. And we kind of see this now in this third iteration of them. How much Laura Loomer was responsible for the cats and dogs at the debates. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think what your guys' finding on that, combined with the kind of the post-election analysis, is very telling.
Yeah, so she was on the plane to the debate, and that wasn't unusual for her. She was rode with Trump for a lot of to Iowa or whatever, to a lot of big nights, and remember, that was the day that this conspiracy theory about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, was blowing up, and she was showing him those memes and that coverage, and this happened because he jumped in on that while he was on that plane. He posted some of those memes from his own account. So it lines up with what she was saying. And then, it wasn't hard to predict based on that this was going to come up in the debate. And, she has no regrets about that, like it was, if it's the only thing that people remember from that debate, she felt like that was on his strong turf, right? It was about immigration. It made it accessible to younger voters in a way that was memorable and got them thinking about the issue in the way that Trump wanted them thinking about the issue.
It's really remarkable because in the moment, and granted, I mean, this happens to a lot of us. We kind of live in these bubbles. Everybody does, even more so these days. But in the moment, you could look at and certainly this is, as you report, this is the way Harris and her team felt about it. They're like, oh, we got him so good. They're doing the remixes of the cats and the dogs and everything and all of that. But it had the opposite effect, as you said. I wonder how the Democrats got so wrong.
Well, there's an amazing moment where Harris's team had all these clips ready to go, and they were deciding what to push. And they decided that she did so well that was the story. They didn't need to push a message out of it. And, that was probably not the best approach. Like, you have to win the debate and you have to win the post debate. And by contrast, the Trump campaign's looking at that. And first of all, they figured anyone who's watching that debate, by definition, is a high information voter. They didn't really care about them. It wasn't going to move the needle with the people who they were targeting. And then they were very focused on, forget about what happened in the debate. We have to win the post debate. We have to take those clips that serve our purposes and push them out to the people we want to see them. And I think they did that successfully.
Who were inside the Trump campaign? Who are the architects of this strategy? Because it ended up being incredibly successful.
Yeah. So early in 2024, around the time that they switched from looking at the primary to looking at the general, James Blair, who was one of Susie Wiles's deputies, and the data guy Tim Saylor went back and looked at the data from 2016 and 2020, and they found something really interesting. Because the conventional wisdom was that Trump lost in 2020 because of weakness with women, right? It was the gender gap. And what they found was actually the reason for what they called the reported vote shortage, which is just a hilarious euphemism for losing, which obviously, you still couldn't admit that Trump did, was not weakness with women, it was weakness with men, right? So he did a little bit worse with men in 2020 and 2016, and that's what made the difference. So like one way they put it was the problem wasn't women who voted for Romney in 2012 and Clinton in 2016. The challenge was with men who voted for Trump in 2016 but Biden in 2020. So what they realized is, the other way of saying it is like, it takes two to have a gender gap, right? So they could afford to lose a little ground with women if they ran up the score with men. And that was something that was very authentic to Trump and a lot of the men working on Trump's campaign. That was something that they felt like they could do. And there was good reason, I think, for us as reporters in real time to be skeptical of that. And also because they were doing it where they were going after Black and Latino men, which historically were more Democratic constituencies, and also lower propensity voters. So they're literally saying, like, they're recognizing that Trump has pushed away reliable Republicans. And so for them to win, they need to expand the electorate to people who didn't typically vote. And any political consultant will tell you, like, getting people to change their behavior is really, really hard. The thinking went that getting people to vote instead of not vote is harder than getting people to change their vote. But the way that Blair and Saylor looked at it actually is, if you focus on people who vote and try to persuade them, you're going to end up wasting resources on a lot of people who vote the other way, right? So they looked at the RNC's targeting in 2020 and they were like, wait, like, we spent all this money mobilizing people who ended up voting for Biden. Like, we're just going to go after people who will definitely vote for Trump if they vote at all. And again, there was reason to be skeptical of that, but they pulled it off.
It's it's so fascinating because I'm sure you look at like Sasha Eisenberg, for instance, the Victory Lab. Every 4 years, or at least traditionally, frankly, I have no fucking idea what the hell's happening now in the post-election. But it used to be every 4 years there'd be kind of a ping pong between the parties, right? You know, we'd go from Rove micro-targeting to the '08 Obama Hope digital strategy, all right, the organizing strategy, to the really, I would argue 16, ironically enough, was supposed to be this super PAC limitless money election, but arguably the person without it is the one who did, you know, is here right now. I wonder, because in that, what you said, I mean, so much of the CW about the kids, it needed to re-engage women, hyperactivate women, right? And there was some evidence of that too, coming out of the 2022 midterms. But this is so, like, it almost reminds me of like Brad Parscale and like the Facebook A/B testing in 2016, which was like, I know a lot of people talk about Cambridge Analytica, and that is its own thing. But like, seriously, like the targeted ads on Facebook, independent of all the Cambridge Analytica stuff, were incredibly powerful in turning out what ended up being his base. It's, yeah.
Right. So the equivalent of that this cycle was podcasts and alternative media. And, you know, I remember the Democrats talking about, like, they were very focused on what was on the nightly news. And, you know, the theory was kind of, those are like normal people who actually vote. And the Trump campaign was like all about the YouTube comments. And the YouTube comments won, you know, like fewer people are watching the nightly news. It's not as influential as it used to be.
It's really, and you know, it's remarkable too. You could even make a good argument that is what used to be the native nightly news audience. People, the older crowd in their 50s and 60s and 70s, now on YouTube. It's remarkable.
Well, I mean, Biden did better with older voters than in the past, right? That's another weird thing about how the demographics changed this time.
Do you think, I'm going to ask you the Calvinist question here, was the outcome fated, or was there anything that would have changed it?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the main arguments we make, is like, sure, the fundamentals were what they were, but, you know, there's no way to look at all these near misses and accidents and not think that things could have been different. You know, I mentioned whether Trump and Biden were going to run, whether the parties were going to go along with it, whether Biden was going to drop out. And, you know, just put aside the assassination attempt. Like, let's not even talk about that. Could have gone completely differently, with an inch of difference. So, you know, you really can look to, you know, even given the fundamentals, like campaigns and candidates matter. Otherwise, we wouldn't have them. We just vote at the beginning. And it's about how the campaigns and candidates address those fundamentals. And you can see how Trump and the Republicans did that successfully, and the Democrats completely failed to do that. There's an amazing moment in Harris's debate prep where they're going through the main topics that she knows she's going to have to address, and like, what are the key points that she's going to want to say about them. And so they get to the economy. That's a tough one. They decide to come back to it. They come back to it. They still don't know. They come back to it later. They never came up. They knew they needed a winning message on the economy, and they never came up with it.
Oh, interesting. You know, there was that moment, and it almost feels like this is something that everybody in the world of politics, and politicians themselves, reporters, prognosticators, pundits, insta-pundits, you name it, anybody in this broad arena, they always fall into this trap of making about something other than Trump. And there was like remember, like in August, like Harris, I can't remember exactly when it was that was it like the beginning of August, I think, that she kind of became the nominee. Was that right, when Biden dropped out?
Well, it was almost exactly a year ago that Biden dropped out, July 20th. So yeah, and then within a few days she had wrapped it up.
So
August was definitely the Harris honeymoon, you know, hot coconut summer, and also the period when Trump was totally reeling, just like could not get his head in the game.
Yeah, It felt like in that moment, it was them, the Harris and her team, to the extent it was her team, whatever portion of it was her team, were presenting a future vision and we're talking forward. But then I think back to the debate and the cats and the dogs, and it's like, okay, right back into sucked back into Trump world. Like, how did they handle that? How did Harris and her team, did they debate this internally, like trying not to fall back into the quicksand?
There really was no time for those kinds of fundamental, like ordinarily a campaign years ahead of time, you would do a ton of research on, what is your message and how do you connect the candidate's bio to that message.
Yeah.
There was no time for that, right? Like, she was stepping into a campaign. They barely changed the leadership. And there was, not only was she saddled with Biden's political baggage, but also all the operational baggage of a campaign that was not running very well. And there was not, well, whether or not there was time to just completely blow up the campaign and start over, she didn't take that approach. She basically left the existing leadership in place, which, as you said, were not really her people, right? So they were not running. Whether you think she would have done better with her own campaign, it's not the campaign that she ran. It was not a campaign that was true to her or customized to her. The like vibes, the hope and joy was kind of just rolling with the burst of enthusiasm that they got by her becoming the nominee. But what both campaigns and I think both Harris and Walz got very swept up in that. It didn't to the end, up until election night, it didn't feel like a losing campaign. Write a concession speech. But what the data people on both the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign recognized right away is this surge of enthusiasm was coming from Democrats who should have already been on the team, dissatisfied with Biden. And that was not to get them over the top. And so, that was the Harris side saw that and was struggling with, well, where are we going to find the people we need to get over the top? And then the Trump side was looking at that and saying, relax, it's a honeymoon, it's going to fade, we've still got this, don't do anything crazy.
It's like, I used to laugh at the term OSINT, open source intelligence, but it's like those, but also now a decade later, it's like, no, that's a real thing. That actually is a real thing. It's like the Tony Fabrizio OSINT memos that he would publish every now and then. I remember that one where there was, I think it might have been September, where he said exactly that. He was telling Trump, just like, cool down. Like, dude, keep steady.
Yeah, and look, I mean, obviously they were releasing them because they wanted to set a storyline, but like those, that was their real data, and their data was spot on.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Democrats, they never had her winning. They always said it was going to be razor thin because that's what they saw.
Do you? And also, I want to give a shout out to my friend and colleague at 24 Site, Michael Cohen, the pollster, because we've talked about this before, and he writes about this fundamental dynamics, like this having time, building a strategy, sticking to a strategy, having the right people in place. I wonder how much this was Trump's second win was predicated on him having that right team in place. Like, could he have done this with the 2016 campaign in as many iterations?
Well, I mean, in another one of these what if moments, he came very close to blowing up his team and bringing Corey Lewandowski back, right? Because he was so upset about Biden withdrawing. He blamed that on his advisors for convincing him to do the early debate and then telling him that Biden wouldn't withdraw. So then when that happened, he was looking for someone to blame. He felt like he was losing, and that, chaotic, impulsive side of him came back. And so he came very closely to ruining everything that they had set up. Part of what they were able to do was have a campaign that kind of worked separately from the candidate. So, so no one's calling Trump a disciplined candidate, but they were able. I think Trump was more focused because of the personal stakes for him. Recognized he was going to go to jail probably if he lost. And then, the campaign was able to convince him to do things like come out with a position on abortion that wouldn't get locked down into supporting a number of weeks nationally. And that was very important. They convinced him that he needed to stop attacking mail voting and early voting, even if he still didn't like them, which he still did. But he needed to say that. That was important. And they were able to push that out and use that and kind of run an operation that was, in a lot of ways, like totally separate from the rallies.
Yeah. I mean, it was really astounding to me looking back on it. I mean, how much, I would focus on, and I think a lot of us focused on, the traditional aspects, right? Conventions, debates, primary elections, rallies. All right. And those rallies were, and I think my fault as a reporter was not recognizing that the lack of energy in the rallies that this time around, thinking that was an indicator. All right. Putting too much onus on those rallies and not recognizing what ended up being the issue here, which is this power of the podcast and the social media networks and proper clipping, speaking to that world properly.
Well, look, I mean, you also have to keep in mind, like, a small Trump rally is still a very large political rally.
It is.
And, Harris and Walz were getting numbers that were large Trump rally numbers, and that was obviously driving him crazy.
Yes.
But again, they had there were days where the rally was for the candidate. The rally was to keep him busy and keep him happy, and field operation was field operation.
Yes. Let me ask you, because you're covering the White House, you're how much, and this is something that I've talked with friends and family about this, since the election. How much of what he is doing now is reflective of what he said he would do?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of anything that he's done, maybe with the exception, although he personally was not out there talking about the Epstein files.
Right.
So yeah, not even with the exception of that. There's nothing that he did. I was surprised when he pardoned every single January 6th defendant, because they had indicated that they wouldn't do the most violent ones. So that surprised me that he did every single one. But he didn't rule it out. There's nothing that he's done that he didn't very explicitly say he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he won while being so upfront about those plans and has given him and the people around him a sense of a license to go ahead with that, right? It's like he won by being exactly who he is. There were lots of people telling him to moderate, don't talk about this, don't say this. He didn't care. He did it anyway. And, he feels like he won even bigger, which he did, right? He actually won the popular vote. So he, I know people argue about how large an electoral mandate it compares historically, but he feels like it's a mandate.
Yeah. In modern times, you could make a pretty good argument that yes, it is. I mean, since, having at least for a Republican, having the actual popular majority in addition to the electoral majority in such a way.
It's also, it's the validation of, he talks about it's even better that we did it this way than if I just won re-election in the first place. And, there's to that in the sense of the vindication. And just like you can't, people treated it like a fluke in 2016, like it was a protest vote. People didn't really, some number of people were just protest voting against Clinton and didn't really appreciate what they were getting with Trump or were willing to give him a chance. And he didn't win the popular vote and Russia interfered. And, you could treat it like a fluke. There's no treating this like a fluke. Everyone, everyone at least should have known exactly what they were getting.
And I would argue too. In some ways, 2016 is the beginning of this is like a normalization, because Russia did interfere again, in different ways than in 2016. But it's almost like now this is a normal part of the American electoral process. Like, you have to, if you're playing in the NFL, right, that's not the minor leagues, have to adjust for it, right? Like, it's just part of the atmosphere. Like, that's just the way things are now. Think about what the assessment of every time I look at the White House, the press guidance, and the new media seat goes to the guy who got $400,000 from the Russians, Tim Pool, on Timcast. I'm like, hey, it's part of the atmosphere.
Yeah, but if you want to talk about 2024 foreign actors, I mean, China and Iran were much more important than Russia.
Yes. I forgot about the Iran files, the hack. Also, I have to say, the J.D. Vance dossier, pardon my French, that was fucking weak. That was not a good dossier. Come on.
Well, first of all, that was the like OSINT, to use your term. That was a clip job. There was additional vetting that happened after that, that actually interviewed people and went deeper than public records. But I mean, look, when I saw that, it was kind of amazing to see all in one place, all the things that he said about Trump. And he managed to get over that with Trump by owning it, and saying that basically the fake news. I made the mistake of trusting what I was reading about you in the media. And so that's how he justifies it. But it was amazing to, see that Trump was picking someone to be his heir apparent, although obviously no one really is, who had said he was unacceptable, who had compared him to an opiate.
Yeah. Yes. And for folks who just joined, I'm Tom LoBianco, editor, co-founder of 24 Site News, with Isaac Arnsdorf of the Washington Post. He is the co-author with Tyler Pager and Josh Dawsey. And I think were all three of you guys together at the Post when you started this?
Yes.
This is a super reporting team. It's, I'm guessing if you're watching this, you probably already know this, but for anybody who's not familiar, Isaac, Tyler, Dawsey is, I'm just going to curse because I'm non-terrestrial. Fuck it. He's a fucking machine. That guy's an animal. All right. Like, he doesn't sleep. He just breathes everything. It's incredible. And this book, 2024, I have enjoyed taking a step back and revisiting this.
Well, yeah, I think we tried to capture what it was like to live through it. And maybe you don't want to relive it, but we were also, and I think our coverage along the way was largely right, but we were still left with some fundamental questions of why, and that's really what we got to the bottom of in this book. Why did things turn out the way that they did, and could it have been different?
Yeah. Do you think so? Let me ask you about the Trump and his team's combativeness with the press, because I saw early indications of this. I mean, he himself has always had sort of this love-hate relationship. I think of Maggie Haberman being foremost among that. Tear her to shreds in public and then hop on the phone with her religiously for 2 decades or so now. How much of that, like when we look at these things, like suing the Wall Street Journal over the Epstein blockbuster, suing restricting the AP over the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, the lawsuits against CBS and ABC and Disney. How much of this is just par for the course with him, like the same guy that kicked out Jim Acosta, or tried to ban Jim Acosta in the first term, versus how much of this is really like a really new and remarkable escalation of how he's behaving? What's your sense of it?
Everything with Trump is transactional and based on leverage. Like what can he get? What can he use? And the campaign was extremely press friendly during the primary when they were running against DeSantis, because they viewed that as a big advantage, right? Like Trump could charm, Trump was an open book, and DeSantis hated DeSantis, like really, and his people really like genuinely hated and distrusted the reporter and wouldn't have anything to do with them. And so they viewed that as an advantage and really played to it. And then as soon as that ended, it completely changed. And they started, basically ignoring the traditional press and just going around to alternatives. So that's how I see it, as like he can turn it off and on when it suits him. Yeah.
In some ways, completely normal for politics, unfortunately.
Well, there's nothing normal about the president suing a newspaper for its coverage of him, or excluding, retaliating with controlling access based on coverage. I mean, that's not American.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Hard agree. Yes. How do you handle it, man? I mean, like, how do you walk the tightrope? Because I mean, for folks who are not reporters, I think it's, they don't always see our craft and how we do this. How is it, like, is it suckier than usual, or is it just more of the same?
I really just focus on doing the job. Like, I just don't think that we're the story. The more that sometimes subjects of reporting try to make the media into the story, it's for their purposes, and we just have to remember who we work for.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, what's coming up on the White House? What are you following right now? It's AI week here. Well, it's always AI week. It's like infrastructure week part 2. It's always AI week here in DC.
I'm on parental leave, so I'm just doing book stuff, and then
congrats, man.
Thank you. And then I go back to the day-to-day in the fall.
Oh, outstanding! Way to go. First.
Yeah.
Way to go, man. Awesome. Hey. Boy, we got 2 babies out of it, man. You got a beautiful new book, beautiful new baby.
Absolutely.
That rocks. Maybe by the time you come back, they'll figured out this AI crap. Well, Isaac, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys. I'm Tom LoBianco. Go find Isaac. Where can we find? Well, we can find 2024. Find it at all major bookstores, on Amazon, your favorite indie bookstores. And which social platforms? Where can we find you?
Best place is WashingtonPost.com.
There we go. All right, guys. Coming up tomorrow, we got Tara Paul Mary on the Epstein, on the victims of Epstein and what they went through. She's a great podcast with Julie Kate Brown 5 years ago, and she's been talking about this. So hop on back over to 24 site on your favorite social media platform. I don't really do X as much as I used to, but it's on there. Swing on by tomorrow. We'll have more on that. I'll be posting this a little bit later. Isaac, thanks, brother.
Thanks again.
See you, man.